Throughout the year, I'll go to many tech shows. This year so far, I've been to several, including the Consumer Electronics Show and the NAB Show, both in Las Vegas. While at these places there's a lot of innovation on display, I get to have some conversations with really smart people about the work they're doing and what they're bringing to market. However, sometimes what's on display eludes my understanding. For example, at both of those shows, there was a booth for the ATSC 3.0 offerings. What is ATSC 3.0? Well, ATSC stands for Advanced Television Systems Committee, and the 3.0 refers to their major standards release, including IP integration into television broadcast. What does all this mean for the end consumer? I have cable, and I have streaming services, and I use browsers to stream as well. I don't have what we would traditionally consider over-the-air broadcast. The technology I was seeing seemed like it's very much in line with what I already have. So not to miss the point, I wanted to understand. I asked my friend Tim Hanlon, who's very much involved in all this, to come on and explain to me what is ATSC 3.0, and better yet, what do I need to understand regarding the future of television? I'm Bryndan Moore, and welcome to the Black Futurist Podcast. The Black Futurist.
That's one small step for man.
Okay.
You ready to go?
The excitement is palpable.
First of all, what is ATSC 1.0? Why should we, who already have cable boxes or watch internet TV, be focused on or even have a knowledge of what's happening in used to be terrestrial television?
No, it's a good question, and it's lost on a whole generation or even two now of consumers. So back in the aughts, the early to mid aughts, there was a great movement to get off of analog transmission and the bandwidth hogging that meant for spectrum to move broadcasting into the digital realm or the digital era. And there was a government mandate from the FCC to the point of even issuing consumers vouchers for turning in their old analog TV sets. You would get 50 or 60 bucks as an incentive, as an inducement to get your old TV out of there so that broadcasters can move to the new quote unquote digital future. In essence, the government mandate is born out of a desire to reclaim spectrum for more modern uses versus bandwidth hogging, literally and figuratively, broadcast television, at least in the analog setup. So as the transition happened, Digital 1.0 or ATSC 1.0 became kind of the vernacular. It's a transmission technology. And ostensibly, it not only freed up unclaimed airwaves to be resold by the FCC for other uses, mobile and other sort of digital communications, but it also gave broadcasters less space to do more.
Right.
And the byproduct has really only become creating extra digital channels, diginets, they were originally called, right? So if you know of MeTV or Bounce or Antenna TV, and there's a litany of other ones, and they're actually ironically morphing into fast channels as well. We can talk about sort of that form factor change.
Are these the channels that you see when you buy the brand new smart TV and there's all the free channels? Is that what those are?
Yeah, but broadcasters have actually, over the last 10 years or so, have actually used those, what used to be just diginets only, right? Literally extra channels that you could get from your over-the-air signal, a .2, a .3, in sort of in the vernacular.
Right.
A number of them have actually used them as also gateways into a fast channel. So there really isn't even a distinction. These are like full-fledged, albeit differently disseminated networks, where you can get Bounce either as a fast channel streaming or as an over-the-air digital television channel / network. The reality, though, is that there was also a lot of hype in the aughts. And I remember going to the NAB show in 2004 and 2005. You had a number of companies that were engaged in this new thing, this new possibility called datacasting. Companies like iBlast and Geocast. Disney even had a startup called MovieBeam. All of these entities and others were all nibbling at this extra spectrum that stations were getting. Again, the technology really means They were getting less spectrum, yet the technology enabled it to do more than a traditional analog broadcast.
Right.
So the station basically could do HD, it could do a couple of extra sidecar channels or diginets, and in theory, there was this extra stuff left over to do some level of data casting that really broadcasters needed to pool together to kind of create some level of scale. But the definition of that was largely within the realm of television, the television industry. And Disney, for example, with MovieBeam, the idea was you would get this box, you would buy it for $100, and Disney would allow you a subscription, and they would digitally drizzle content
Right.
over the air on an off channel or maybe on an off evening. They would reduce the power of the broadcasting that they were doing, and those bits and bytes would reassemble in your supplicant box, and you could access on demand for a fee movies or television series or shows and that kind of stuff.
Right.
Primitive by today's standards, but data casting was perceived to be a thing. It wound up becoming kind of less than. There were some pooled efforts to kind of do some kind of stuff, but it really didn't gain a whole level of. But the door was open to the possibilities, and now we sit at the precipice of 3.0, which is supposedly going to be that but cubed.
Okay, so 1.0 was generally adopted as a result of a mandate that said, "Hey, we are pushing you to get people off analog. Send everybody to Radio Shack to go get your digital antennas, and we're gonna move you forward." By the way, 2 towns over in Siler, North Carolina, I was driving through to get to, I think, Asheboro, North Carolina, and I drove past what appeared to be a functioning Radio Shack, which I was amazed. I didn't know that was still even possible.
You should check across the street to see if there's a Blockbuster too.
Right. Which would be scary because my sci-fi brain would go like, "Am I in the Twilight Zone? Did I get?"
And then definitely there would be a limited series about that. Sure.
Right.
Maybe we're onto something.
Exactly. Don't go back there. No. So was there a 2.0?
That's funny you say that. To the outsider, it would be kind of curious, right? It's not unlike Chicago O'Hare Airport where there is no Terminal 4. There's Terminal 5. There are Terminals 1 through 3, but there is no Terminal 4. Why is that? I actually don't know the answer to that, and I probably should. But it was thought that in, 15 years ago, literally just after 1.0 was done, there was, of course, another new set of technology that was sort of on the horizon. And as sort of people coalesced around, okay, let's focus on maybe making that a reality. I would say about 2015 or so, you had sort of a belief that, okay, we really want to showcase this technology and show that really it's not only a next level, but even beyond that. You have to also remember that the 3.0 distinction also has gotten a lot more traction in places like South Korea, where it's actually much more fully utilized in all kinds of different circumstances. It's almost been kind of the avatar for what is possible in the United States and in Europe.
Right.
So I think there was just a general belief that this was sort of a scaled next level that was not even worthy of a 2.0, but just literally go to a next level 3.0 distinction. So the marketing engine is sort of already underway, but it's a pretty compelling proposition. If anybody went over to the booth at this year's NAB or last year's NAB or the year before's NAB or any NAB for the last 10 years, will know that this is sort of a combination, a fusion of over-the-air and IP, and in a broadcast kind of package that can be an amazing array of different opportunities and solutions, both for television and for things outside of television. The problem is that nobody seems to want to coalesce around what those things should be and what the priorities should be.
So there's the question, is viewer experience. So let's say I, for some reason, am super interested in ATSC. I think that it's fantastic. I've got enough screens around here, either attached to some type of dongle or Apple TV or something that are already living on the internet. Why should I consider ATSC? How is it going to improve my life? Or why should I vote when Raleigh says, hey, we want to spend some money towards pushing towards the ATSC 3.0 standard?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's also important to step back one step, because this technology has been sort of positioned as being sort of two buckets of future stuff, right? One is I would generally call better TV, right? So that would arguably have more consumer viability to it, right? Better sound, better picture, but also the business of television, right? The ability to do things like targeted addressable advertising, which is a hallmark of IP digital, right? The ability to have interactivity in apps that essentially interact with or allow you to interact with programming. Certainly better measurement schema, those kinds of things. Among a number of other sort of better television business or experiences for consumers. There's also another bucket, though, which is I would call sort of beyond TV, which doesn't have anything necessarily to do with television, right? So this is the realm of more pure play data, right? So not unlike the 1.0 transition, what do you do with that residual bandwidth? Or frankly, maybe a bigger part of the bandwidth should be devoted to things that don't necessarily have anything to do with the TV viewing experience, right? So it could be a renewal of, say, the movie being an example, right? We use some of that data to take bits and bytes and make television that much more discretionary or niche or conditional or subscription oriented or whatever by using that sort of non-linear, if you will, presentation, right? You store it forward into a box, and that could do a whole range of things. But I think broadcasters get the most energy around what could we do at a wholesale level with this data? Could we resell this in a more enterprise way to municipalities for smart city applications, to automobile manufacturers, to be a better, more efficient way to digitally drizzle software operating system updates or recall alerts or those kinds of things to devices, etc. It's not unlike the old railroad systems that Philip Anschutz and his folks owned for years, and it basically became the right of way for what became the first fiber optic telephone business in Quest, right? It's kind of, and this is the opportunity and also the problem, because what I've just described to you is sort of two areas of opportunities. How much of that is consumer facing and or beneficial, and how much of it is actually rooted in television becoming any better? Discuss, right? And that's literally the tennis ball that's been bandied about. And it's been a problem because it's analysis paralysis and or what's the terminology? It's a, Barry Schwartz, the paradox of choice. There are so many different possibilities with this stuff. The problem is that the industry and others kind of need to coalesce about what should be the priorities and make those happen. That's been kind of a conundrum.
You said let's take a step back. Let's take a further step back. Let's define broadcast in this context. Do you consider, let's say, Netflix a broadcaster?
Yeah, it's an outdated term, isn't it? Right. So broadcast is, in this context, is really more about the transmission environment, the way things go from point A to, let's say, various points B. Right. So broadcast, by definition, means an antenna or some mechanism, right, that is broadly sending out a signal that is to be received by a relatively large amount of people, whether that be in a particular market or even on a larger scale, right? And like the name implies, broadcast means broadly appealing and delivering to a large audience, right? Back in the day, 3 broadcast networks, a handful of TV stations in a market. That was the business model. And an antenna that you bought, put on your TV, you put on your roof, and you received all of those signals. And then you tuned into which ones you wanted. Look, the very existence of a technology platform that fuses broadcast technology and what we sort of define as an internet or wireless IP kind of delivery mechanism, right? Which is packets and sort of various routes to things and stuff, and getting all compiled at the same time at the end somehow, either very quickly or very slowly, depending on what the best route is. It's kind of a mind blow in that you could actually fuse those two things together, right? So in theory, anything that we do in utilizing IP today can now be done in a broadcast mechanism, right? So to your question, is Netflix a broadcaster? The answer conceivably is kind of yes, right? There's nothing eventually to stop a Netflix or any other quote unquote today streaming service being delivered in a conditionally accessed subscription way over the airwaves to one's home. It's just another delivery mechanism, just as much as 5G is, or a DSL line is, or used to be, or a broadband connection from your cable modem.
Right.
So it's yet another entry point to the home, believe it or not.
Got it.
That's interesting stuff.
So are we talking about capabilities that are already happening via the internet, and now we're talking about extending that to broadcast? And I run the parallel to say, when I was a child, we would go to the library all the time, and I would borrow books and I would go study. And then eventually in my college years, these privatized libraries where you didn't have to be quiet, called Barnes & Noble and Borders, opened up, and we can go in there and make all the noise we want and still get access to the books. So the technology and the access and the capability was all there in the commercial space, but not in the public space. Are we talking about a distinction between capabilities that are already happening in the internet and streaming environments that are now being made available in the public space of broadcast?
Yeah, I mean, it's a little dicey when you talk about in the public. We get to things like public domain and the like, right? So I think from a technical perspective, right, anything that's been being done now that relies on quote unquote the internet, right, in whatever manner it's delivered, is conceivably achievable over the air via sort of an internet protocol sort of based technology. Heck, there are people in the broadcast community that envision the idea of creating an internet provider through broadcast means, right? So that could be a solve for rural internet connectivity, right? I doubt the throughputs are going to be gigantically superior, but in terms of coverage, right? I mean, the theory is that it should be much more accessible. I mean, look, internet access, right, is still a largely monopolistic or duopoly situation for most consumers in the United States. There's not a whole lot of choice,
Right.
except in rare, overbuilt, densely urban areas where you actually have a choice, right? Very, very little. But again, if that were to be maybe using your terminology, more of a public benefit or good, right? That's a lot of bandwidth to apportion to broadband internet provision, right? That's obviously going to make much more limited the amount of television goodness that can come out of that, and or this enterprise data opportunity, right? The spectrum, even though it's like even more full of capacity, it still has limitations, right? You have to apportion a certain amount of stuff. And I think this is maybe where you're kind of scratching on something, which I think is not really sort of talked about on the open yet. And that is, what is sort of the private versus public good of all of this, right? Because the reality is these are public airwaves, right? I think it's lost on a whole bunch of people that ostensibly these TV stations exist because they have been given licenses by the Federal Communications Commission, right, to broadcast for the public benefit of the populace. These airwaves are supposedly, precious. They are granted by the government a license to do this, and for a particular purpose. Is the purpose, though, of this now new enhanced technology using these public airwaves to be in the business of reselling enterprise data to corporate customers, right? That has nothing to do with consumer benefit, right? Or more succinctly, bettering of television for news, information, communication within the populace. It brings up some really big societal and regulatory issues that, while broadcasters have latched on to retrans and getting paid by cable operators and all that kind of stuff, becoming cable-like networks, if you will. And yes, people can get broadcast television over the air. There's a whole generation of people who don't even know that there's a free over-the-air television thing via an antenna. There's some gnarly issues rolled up in this new technology, not yet mandated, by the way, you said it before, that may or may not fully be for the public benefit and bettering of television. So some really interesting issues that have to be sort of solved here, despite the fact that this technology is, there's no doubt that this is an improvement on a whole bunch of different fronts.
It's better, right? So let me crown you king of broadcast right now. What do you adopt? Do you adopt ATSC, and how do you get adoption through? And where does that put us 100 years from today? High level.
Yeah, I mean, look, accepting that crown, I would say it's kind of tarnished right now, and I need to get a little bit of brass cleaner or whatever one gets to sort of keep their jewels and their crown shiny.
Right.
But I do think it is buffable and recoverable. I mean, taking all of those distractions and those regulatory issues and societal sort of components to all this story away for a minute, it is conceivable that broadcast technology could indeed be an ultimate replacement to a network operator like a cable or satellite entity, right? This could be a pure pipe, literally, to consumers because of its scale, its bandwidth, and its capabilities, right? Everything from pure play internet connectivity to the television and video that television essentially is known for today,
Right.
but with so many other improved permutations. Um, and maybe to the point of being the deliverer of fast channels instead of having it be a Pluto TV on one's streaming platform, right? That streaming platform could be delivered over the air, right?
Right.
Anything that we're doing in streaming. And at the very least, if anything else, it's just a big pile of extra bandwidth to do more stuff.
Yeah.
It could be a better way to send stuff downstream. It could be an improvement to telephony. It can merge with 5G and be a mesh kind of technology. So all kinds of things you can do with a broadcast internet pipe. But I will say this, the only way you get to those nirvanas, plural, is to start prioritizing which of those 60 different improvements should be the majority activities. Because right now, everybody's throwing stuff against the wall and nobody kind of is driving any of it. It's just been this, hey, we're in 60 or 70% of the United States right now with signal coverage. Once that signal coverage is achieved across the country, I think it really is dependent upon not only the broadcast industry, but frankly, opening up this pipe to, I don't know, a set of entrepreneurs,
Hmm.
companies that want to maybe take advantage of having to build something off of this. What I fear thus far is that this has been too closely held to the vest by the broadcast community. I guess rightly so, because they're the ones spending all the money on it
Yeah.
to build out these signals and sticks and all that kind of stuff. But it's really going to take a literal and figurative village to kind of create like the things that actually consumers will find interesting and or determine like what societally is best done for the data parts of the business. If we sit around and wait for a small club of broadcasters to figure that out, well, we've been touted for 10 years now. We're still waiting.
Yeah. I feel like there's got to be lessons to be learned from the satellite broadcast industry and what they're doing. I don't think we have to be, if I'm speaking we in terms of broadcasters, taking that moniker for a second, I don't think we have to be the canary in the coal mine. There's some things that are already laid out in terms of what does two-way data between broadcaster and receiver look like and what good has come of it. So to reference something you said earlier, we could use a little choicelessness. We might benefit and get some early progress forward and reduce some frictions if there was some general, maybe even federal understanding and mandate that says, hey, this part is a solid foundational step,
Look, at the end of the day, I think what streaming has taught us is that there's this is just let 1,000 niches sort of bloom, right? I mean, the internet sort of has gotten us to a place which we can debate whether how good or bad that is, but let's take the good side of it. I mean, it doesn't take 10 million viewers to a linear channel to be a viable media business anymore,
Right.
right? I mean, a Mr. Beast who's got, I don't know, tens of millions of followers on YouTube. YouTube is the gatekeeper for that for sure, but the reality is that he's built that audience very organically over the last couple of years, and his reach rivals what a broadcast television network used to deliver on a prime time show, 20 years ago, right?
Right.
So there are many different ways to build an audience of sizable scale and economic viability. And to me, this is just another entry point into how media businesses at least can evolve and be delivered to consumers. And, if there's some pure play enterprise data things that come along with it, all the better, I guess. It's going to die on the vine, though, if some coalescence around priorities about which businesses should happen, because it's inevitable that it's going to be nationwide availability.
Yeah.
It's highly uncertain. And you said it before at the very outset of the conversation. It might require an FCC mandate to
Right.
actually sort of make it happen. And if that's the case, which I think could be a good thing, I do think that the government has to extract a pound or two of flesh in the process, because it cannot be solely for pure play commercial profit and gain, because there are public airwaves at stake.
Right.
And that's not a political issue. That's a natural resources issue. And I think you could make the argument, as I have, that in the era of retrans over the last 20 years or so, and emulating cable networks to get paid twice for your programming, broadcasters have kind of lost a bit of an edge on that front. When you cut your cord and don't get cable anymore, there are not a whole lot of broadcasters shouting from the rooftops, "Hey, get us for free over the air,"
Right.
right? Even though that is ostensibly what they're there for governmentally. So
Hmm.
we'll see. But could be
You know,
some time to course correct the evolution of media this way.
I love the idea of the possibility of it becoming an internet service provider. I had an in-depth conversation with an executive at Microsoft just after the pandemic, talking about the issues in broadband equity for rural families or even socioeconomic challenged families, for when we got hit with instant and forced remote learning, that some people were just at an instant disadvantage. So any solution that might lean in towards creating some equity there, especially when it deals with education, is a big deal to me.
There has been a bunch of experimentation on that, as well as, by the way, emergency alerting.
Yep.
A better way to
Hmm.
inform, especially when it comes to natural disasters or impending doom and that kind of stuff.
Yep.
When everybody's splintered into all kinds of different ways, right? That emergency alerting system we grew up with, or at least I grew up with.
The siren.
It's or siren, or interrupting a broadcast
Yep. Hmm.
when I'm watching a stream, right? It's already broken. So how do you reaggregate that sort of emergency sort of alert system, right?
Right.
So I think there's great opportunity for public benefit that should be cemented into whatever businesses may evolve out of all of this. That's my only concern, is to ensure that there is some significant public benefit to these public airwaves, because that's the only reason that broadcasters have them in the first place.
We were at CES together 2 years in a row. We were at NAB together recently. We've seen a lot of people presenting their innovation, bringing it to display. And we had maybe an unfair advantage because of our role in those conferences, that we got to see and ask more questions of more exhibitors than other people. What were a couple things at either conference that really got you interested? What are you really excited about, or at least more curious to ask more questions about, that you saw this year?
I would generally characterize my area of interest as, call it, more augmented reality, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I know these terms are bucketed already and stuff, and sort of virtual reality is one thing, completely suspending disbelief and sort of being in sort of artificial and removed worlds, or detached from reality kinds of worlds. I really am intrigued by what I think is a very easy to understand consumer proposition of making the physical world a little bit more navigable,
Mm-hmm.
a little bit more understandable, a little bit more data enhanced.
Yep.
And I think Snap, for example, has done probably the best job at this, or at least the most persistent job of this. Doesn't mean that they are by any means the only ones that can do this, but with a phone or device that's got increasingly very powerful camera components to it, I just think of very simple use cases where I'm emerging from my subway ride in Manhattan and I'm coming up. The map is one thing, but even when you're looking at the map, you still don't have a real good sense of like what corner you're
Right.
on and where north and south is. But just the ability to have the camera know kind of where you are, and maybe, sort of surface that there are these 5 stores embedded in this building, or the place that you're looking for is over there, or just to zoom out a little bit and sort of see things either commercially or non-commercially, just for information's sake.
Yeah.
To me, you marry that with mapping
Mm-hmm.
and or GPS in stores, in-store wayfinding, that kind of stuff. I mean, these are just very simple, basic solves for life, right?
Yeah.
That I think AR, without being sort of like Pokemon and trying to see these virtual things that don't exist, and I look at virtual reality like in sports broadcasts and stuff. It's like,
Yeah.
okay, it's like they're fun eye candy. I get that. But I think there's some real consumer solves and very basic ones
Yeah.
that augmented reality can sort of bring to the with a lens, whatever your technology, with its glasses, whatever that is, right? And I think that could be a really dynamic and sustainable business use case for that kind of stuff without even getting all worried about how to create all these digital images for, I don't know, gaming like experiences. I don't need a game experience when I'm getting out of the subway and looking for where I need to be at my business meeting from 5 minutes ago
Right.
because I'm
Yep.
late, right?
Yep.
I need to get there. I mean, if I need a donut and coffee, I need a donut and coffee, right? Help me get to that, right?
That's great.
And if you want to incentivize me along the way, great. But solving those kinds of things, AR to me feels like that as a use case that feels dramatically helpful.
I agree. Now, you've experienced this, right? I mean, Google Maps is doing this. I get out of the subway, I'm just getting signal back, and if I hold it vertically instead of holding the phone down, it'll give me the blue arrows in certain cities. Do you have that in Chicago?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
but I still think that's basic, right? I mean, I think
Yeah.
there's another level of
Yep.
visual intricacy,
That's right.
perhaps, or melding, if you will. That if I see an object, I mean, I remember when I was running my ventures practices at Publicis and IPG. I mean, one of my first exits, it was a bunny of an exit, but it was kind of compelling. It was a company called SnapTel.
Hmm.
And the idea was you could hold up your phone at that time. This is circa, I don't know, 2006, 2007, to an image that either had information embedded in it or didn't, right?
Right.
We're not even talking about a barcode. And a barcode is another sort of very, very basic version of this, right? But you'd hold it up and see an image, and that image would register some kind of information or take you to something, right?
Right.
So the idea's been around for a while. It just hasn't been elegantly executed, I don't think, or in a helpful utility kind of way.
Right. I've played with a couple apps that use that technology. I think it's fantastic, and I'm still in the play with it mode of, hey, let's do a scavenger hunt. And so I'm going to scan this particular view of the front porch, and if the kids come along with the camera, and bam, it'll bring up a video that I recorded or something like that. It reminds me a lot of QR codes and how it was available for a very long time, and it wasn't until we didn't want to touch a menu because there was this invisible illness that it really came into that choicelessness again of using a technology that had been sitting there looking for and waiting for an impetus, a push from the greater society to adopt. So that's interesting.
Yeah, needs drive that, right?
Yeah.
Necessity being the mother of invention, proverbially. I think the barcode or the QR code, right, is an artificial gateway, right? I think the
Hmm.
next step in this evolution is to have an image, a logo, a bunch of other things. Frankly, whatever, if it can be created as an image, it should be able to be embedded with data behind it,
Yeah.
either artificially over time, right? So that literally everything I shoot outside my window or a post box or whatever, will literally be embeddable, or I can, with purpose put data behind it, right? And there's a
Right.
whole sort of angle to that. But look, to me, this is also part of a bigger sort of solve for problems around guidance and navigation, which I think is applicable also in TV and video, right?
Yeah.
We're overwhelmed with choices, right? So this is sort of the other half of my things that I see that I'm really intrigued with is, again, it's the paradox of choice. Barry Schwartz is the guy who wrote the book on it, literally and figuratively. And you turn on your TV, your smart set, you've got a zillion choices, how many fast channels and all these DVR things I've recorded and how many linear channels and all kinds of streaming platforms. And I got half an hour to watch something.
Yeah. Yeah.
What am I going to watch? And
Right.
by 20 minutes in, you finally find something to watch, and guess what? You got to go.
Yeah. Time's up.
It's everything all at once. Too much of everything all at once. Consumers like to have some help me out,
Yeah.
right? And not an anonymous algorithm that I'm giving away my personal data to. Give me the tools to do it. I'll find what I want. I know what I want.
Yeah.
Help me out. I think YouTube's doing a pretty good job of it. I mean, YouTube's algorithms are pretty impressive when I'm watching content, but there's a little bit of a freak show there because it's Google data and it's been, absorbing all kinds of stuff. It's a huge walled garden on lots of platforms, but there's a long way to go elsewhere for sure.
Yeah. Cool. Tim, where do you want people to learn more about everything you're doing? And please include your podcast. I know it's a little off topic from tech, but I think it's important that people have the opportunity to hear your voice.
All right. Nice of you to say. Thank you for having me for sure. The day job is the Vertere Group. So Vertere Group vertere.com, Vertere Group, verteregroup.com. All the bells and whistles there. We work with lots of startups, lots of big companies, all trying to figure out the future. The night job, but I wouldn't call it a job, it's more of a hobby, is a little podcast I call Good Seats Still Available, goodseatsstillavailable.com. Anywhere you podcast, you'll find it. If you're interested in a niche of a niche, which is forgotten teams and franchises and sports leagues and all that kind of stuff, you ever wonder what the hell happened to the Chicago Sting or the Charlotte Hornets of the old World Football League and everything in between, you will be satiated from great conversations with people who were there, people who've written books or done movies about them. And you can follow us Twitter at Good Seats Still for that.
Thank you so much, my friend.
Pleasure's mine. Thank you for having me.